In 2003, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time I think was the most influential game in the action-adventure genre since Tomb Raider 1 in 1996. When came time for Crystal Dynamics to take over the series and reboot with Tomb Raider Legend in 2006, these are the many things from Ubisoft's first Prince of Persia that they took heavy inspiration from. So let's see how Legend looked at Sands of Time and said, "Cool game design document, bro. Mind if I copy your entire personality?" I actually only found out about Prince of Persia after I heard so many comparisons to it post-Legend, so I got curious and have enjoyed the series since, and can see where the more than just similarities lie. Prince of Persia is the game that showed every other developer what slick, fluid, responsive and refined character control should feel like. A lot of games until then were still figuring out what good, well-tuned controls should be like in the hands of the player, and Prince of Persia: Sands of Time showed every developer this is what tight control and animation blending in tandem with each other should look like. As much as I love Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, it did have earth-shatteringly bad controls, so it made sense that the first thing Crystal looked at was player responsiveness. Previously in Tomb Raider, the platforming was based around jumping from platform to platform that you could stand on, where you could steer in mid-air and make micro adjustments. The control was fully in your hands. You had to be the one to measure that jump distance, compare it with Lara's abilities, and make that call as to whether she'd make the gap or not. In Sands of Time, you spend a lot of time on walls, shimmying along them either standing or hanging, launching from vertical pole to pole or horizontal poles, chaining slick moves together. Jump distances were fixed and consistent every time you make a jump in Sands of Time, but lacked mid-air steering. This is a gameplay ethos that Crystal took for Legend in a near identical fashion, but they made Lara's decision to grab a ledge down to the game's often inconsistent and arbitrary auto-ledge detection rather than simply if her hands would normally reach it or not. Thankfully that was dropped in the 2013 reboot though. Uncharted in 2007 did the exact same thing, and it seems the industry stuck with this trend where wall hugging became and remains the new platforming. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is a very linear game, and I think in the mid-2000s there was a trend for games to be quick-paced thrill rides, and both Sands of Time and Legend are very, very short, but at least you could never accuse them of having padding or wasting your time. Well, apart from those cringy bike sequences. Both games are also very easy. Back in the day, games were harder either because arcade machines would make more money off you by making it hard to complete the game when you inevitably died a lot, or because with early 3D, certain game development techniques were yet to be figured out and standardized, so things could still be awkward and experimental. When gaming became primarily enjoyed at home and developers standardized best practice, I think the trend for games became too easy, it took effect, but I think that overcorrection has mostly leveled out nowadays. When it comes to the way the story plays out, the prince has Farah to bounce off and banter with, the equivalent that Legend has, Zip and Alistair over the headset. Suddenly, Lara Croft wasn't just raiding tombs, she was unpacking trauma, dropping one-liners and reminiscing about her dead mummy while traversing temples of doom in South America. It's like Farah, but split into two guys who somehow never run out of things to say even when you're dodging blades in a collapsing tomb. The prince had depth, regret and a personal arc. Legend had to rewrite Lara's backstory to achieve the same thing. But on a business level, after Angel of Darkness, it did make sense to clone the Prince of Persia gameplay, design ethos, slap on the Angelina Jolie film skin and call it a day. But on a creative level, I will always maintain that Legend could have modernized the classic formula without removing intricacy, suspense, danger, loneliness and the freedom to wander and fully interact with the environment that the classic game offered. It's beyond question that it was a very commercially successful game, so it worked. But in my opinion, it was at the expense of Tomb Raider and Lara's depth and identity. So yeah, Tomb Raider Legend borrows a lot from Sands of Time, but if you're gonna copy someone good. I won't say Sands of Time was the best. I think its sequel, Warrior Within, improved on every single aspect to the point where it's in my top 5 favorite games ever, but Sands of Time undeniably broke a lot of new ground. I'm curious to know, if you played any of the PS2 Prince of Persia games, did you notice the similarities back in the day? Or if you haven't, do you want to try them now? But it also brings up the debate of where do you draw the line between taking inspiration and just straight up control C'ing and control V'ing? So to help answer those questions and a few more is my friend Craig, who is very big on Tomb Raider and Prince of Persia. Thank you so much for coming, lad.
Thanks for having me, mate.
But of
Finally
course.
time I get in the spotlight.
Yes. So I guess I first wanted to ask, did you play Prince of Persia or Tomb Raider Legend first?
I played Prince of Persia first. I was playing Prince of Persia right the way back to the original, 2D scroller game on PC when I was about 7, 8 years old, maybe even younger. I was obsessed with it. So when Sands of Time came out, I was on it.
Okay, good. I was kind of hoping it would be that way round, because then you would have played Legend after. Did you then immediately notice the similarities or not at all?
To be honest, I didn't notice the similarities. I think probably because of the number of years that there were between the two titles, to be fair.
Do you think it was the right business move to copy Prince of Persia? Because it was proven, it was successful.
I think Crystal Dynamics had quite a lot on their plate when it came to relaunching Tomb Raider. And I think that all games in some respect copy elements that the developers like or that prove popular at the time from the research that they do. So I can see and understand why they would have taken elements from Prince of Persia and thought, hey, that looks really cool. I can imagine Lara being able to do that. If she's an acrobat, she can swing from poles and swing from things and jump from pillar to pillar with ease. However, back then I would refer to her animations in the way that you controlled her. She was more like a monkey than a human being, in the way that she would grab ledges and haul herself up, and she would just like leap up onto a ledge. I liked, maybe it's just me, but I liked how in the classics her animations were hand done, and she she was slower, but it looked more realistic in a way to me.
Yeah.
It felt like she had some weight to her, even though she could jump ridiculously much higher than the normal person. But then in Legend it seemed to flip. So she seemed to be able to do all these amazing, swings and jump from pole to pole and move really fast along ledges, but then she would just do a little hop when you wanted her to jump.
Yeah, definitely. I've always thought she moved like an orangutan on crack or something. Terrible. But it did feel slick.
Martini.
But it did feel really slick and responsive, and I think that is extremely valuable. I just wish they could have paired that with slightly more realistic animations.
Yeah, I think on the whole, I can see why they did it. They had a lot on their plate. As you said in the video, they were, putting on a skin from the movies, incorporating the manor. They brought Toby Gard back on board to try and add some credibility to the team, in going back to how it was, he would have originally seen, Lara. So I get it. I can see why they did it.
Yeah. But I guess, where do you draw the line? Where does it become plagiarism? I wouldn't say it was plagiarism for Legend, though, but
no,
it's a question.
I think for us as a fan base, we were probably back, then used to Tomb Raider leading the way. It was revolutionary when it came, it came out. And then when Legend came along, it was a great game, really, for what it was, but it wasn't really changing the landscape. It wasn't doing anything really different.
Yeah.
It was just doing something different for Tomb Raider.
Yeah, in a bad way, in my opinion. Do you think that went too far?
At the time, I agree with you. I didn't really like it back then. I kind of felt it was going too far away from the Tomb Raider that I knew and I loved. Mostly because of the way that they did actually change Lara's characteristics and her motivations. But now I kind of look back on the game kind of fondly. I played a little bit earlier. And it's Legend is Legend.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think a lot of people see the Survivor reboot as being, the big fan base divider or whatever, but Legend back in the day, it really did cause divides.
It did.
But yeah, it's interesting that your opinion maybe is changing a little bit. Because, yeah, you said to me before the last time you played Legend was 10 years ago. Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I wasn't keen. Really wasn't bothered about going back to it, especially not with the remasters that we've been, lucky to have the last few years.
yeah. Well, you booted it up just earlier. Do you think you'll play a little bit more, maybe complete it?
Probably not.
Oh, really? How
I
come?
probably won't. I'm playing Indiana Jones at the minute.
Okay.
And it's interesting because there's elements that are in this new Indiana Jones game that are still being used, now, with characters working off each other, helping each other out. And I thought that's quite interesting. That's an element that games are still using today.
Yes, which was actually one of my next questions about how Farah is, the prince's little companion. So do you think Crystal maybe felt pressured to, or inspired to have their own version of companions being Zip and Alistair?
I think they were definitely inspired because they had to, as I said, they had a lot on their plate and they were trying to do something different and fresh for the time. But I hated that constant irritating chatter from Alistair and Zip in her ear. And actually, if you listen to it even now, it sounds just really cheap and it's very Americanized.
Yeah.
And to me as well, Lara never needed help from anybody. So to kind of then, have those two constantly in her ear during the game, but I can. Admittedly, obviously, they had Zip in Tomb Raider Chronicles, one of the classic games, but it was only for a small section.
Yeah.
I can see how they probably did see, how Farah was introduced in Prince of Persia, and thought about how they could, because it kind of played to the changes that they made with Lara as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's, likely why they did it, to build upon it.
I always thought that with the headset, they could have had it so that the signal goes bad when she goes a bit too far underground or something. That would be...
That's a really great idea. I don't know why anybody hasn't said that before. That makes perfect sense.
Well, the funny thing is, in the England level, Zip says signals poor Lara at a certain point. But ironically, that's when they're in England, when they're in the van outside the museum. Yet when she's in the mountains of Bolivia, the signal is perfect. But artistic license, hey?
We all know what signal's like in the UK.
Do you have a prediction for what popular franchise they might emulate?
I think that Crystal, through all the faults in the past, trying to take the franchise in their own direction, put their own stamp of things. I think that probably now that, especially with the how successful the remasters have been, I think that they've realised that they need to maybe do a little bit of backtracking, and they need to, think really carefully about what worked and what didn't work in all iterations of Tomb Raider. And I think that they'll do their darn best, because if they don't, the franchise is going to be in a lot of trouble.
I think ultimately, we've kind of concluded that, I guess, in our opinions, that, they didn't plagiarize or anything. I think it is kind of fair enough to take inspiration from a successful formula. They had to play it safe.
I think that, they really did have a lot on their plate relaunching Tomb Raider in 2006, and I think, they probably... spent quite a lot of time looking at a lot of games that had recently been out, things that they were doing, platformers that might have been considered quite similar to Tomb Raider. And I think, originally, wasn't it said that the original Tomb Raider was inspired by the original Prince of Persia?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
So I think it's fair to say, there were definitely elements that they thought, that could work. That can take Tomb Raider into a bit of a different direction, introduce something new, even though it wasn't new, but new for the franchise. And I think all game developers do it in some way or another.
That was interesting to get your insights. I do appreciate you coming on here and speaking about it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.
You know how I like to talk.
Yes, but anytime. Thank you so much. So bye for now.
Bye for now.